StudyIQ IAS, आपका सिलेक्शन हमारा मिशन।
Namaskar. Welcome to this session on essay writing. In the previous session that I had with you, I had spoken about preparedness for writing of essays. Today, we will discuss essays that have come during the previous years, and an attempt has been made by us to categorize these essays in a manner that it would become easy for you to organize your thoughts. Meaning thereby that if you look at the categories that we worked out for preparing for these essays, you will soon discover that if you prepare for a particular category, then you can perhaps write any essay that comes in that category. So you don't have to prepare many essays, you have to prepare for categories. But before I do that, let me do a bit of a recap with regard to how do you prepare for essay writing. And this is extremely important. That is why I keep talking about these aspects whenever I talk about either essay writing or answer writing or any other subject. Because unless you develop these fundamental attributes, you will neither be able to write an essay, you will neither be able to answer a question on ethics or even otherwise the general studies answers. So certain general attributes become extremely critical for you to be able to write a good essay, to write an answer. That is one, and I'll come to that. I would also like to emphasize that whatever I'm going to talk about essays today will not be merely relevant for essay writing. It would be relevant for other subjects as well, more so for ethics. I think both ethics and essay writing are very intensively related to each other. So if you prepare your ethics papers well, and if you do that, then you will be simultaneously preparing for essay writing and vice versa. And while developing those attributes which I'm going to mention now, you will not only be able to do well in essay writing, you will be able to do well in your ethics paper and other papers as well. So let me go over to the fundamental attributes for prepare for civil service examination, as also to prepare for essay writing. I had spoken about 4 important attributes. One is knowledge. Of course, you can't compete in an examination without knowledge. So knowledge you'll acquire. Frankly speaking, most of you are only busy acquiring knowledge. So I don't have to hammer this point much because you are in any case going to acquire knowledge. I'm not going to the details of it. However, related to knowledge is developing the skill of comprehension. I have said that in the past, but let me repeat. What exactly does comprehension mean? It means that you are able to understand what you read quickly. I don't know whether you experience this. I used to experience that. When my comprehension skills were not so good, it used to take me much longer to understand what was written there. And hence, it is important to develop comprehension skills. I am not going to the details of how should you develop your comprehension skills. There is a separate video for that. You can have a look at that. Right now, I'm merely emphasizing the importance of this aspect of essay writing, because while acquiring knowledge for essay writing, or for that matter any other subject, if you have better comprehension skills, you will be able to do that job much faster than otherwise, because you'll be able to understand what comes before you quickly. The third and a very important aspect is analytical skills, analysis. Now, you may have all the knowledge sitting here in your head, and you would have understood it also. But if you're unable to analyze that, and that's a very important attribute that you have to develop both for the purpose of writing answers as also more importantly for essay writing, because you would have acquired a lot of knowledge regarding subjects, but your ability to analyze that in your mind becomes very, very important. And this has to become a very automated process for your mind. If you develop these skills, and mind you, development of these skills is going to take longer than acquisition of knowledge, because knowledge you can acquire by reading it once, but the skill of analysis comes through practice, practice and practice. Again, I'm not going to tell you how to go about developing analytical skills that I've spoken about in another video, but let me emphasize the importance of developing skills of analysis. And fourth, obviously, is the most important one. You communication skills. Ultimately, the marks that you will get in the examination will be based on what you write in the examination. So you may have all the knowledge sitting here, you may have all the analytical skills here, but until you write them well in the written exam and you speak them well in the personality test, you will not get marks. So this becomes also very critical in terms of getting good marks. So it has to be knowledge, it has to be comprehension, it has to be analytical skills, and it has to be communication skills. All these are very, very important in terms of doing well in the examination, as also in terms of essay writing. Now, having said that, let me now come to specifics of essay writing. If you look at the previous year's essays that have been asked, and we did a lot of analysis here at StudyIQ, we came to the conclusion that broadly there are two areas in which essays are asked. One is the area of philosophical essays, and the other is such essays where facts are important. Now, in philosophical essays, you may not require as many facts as in essays where you may have to write about government schemes, about the approaches to health and family welfare development, of variety of subjects that come where facts become very important. So whereas in the first category of subjects, your command over language becomes very, very important. In the second one, yes, you have to have command over language, but you have to have facts to embellish and establish the points that you're making. In the first instance of philosophical essays, you may not require as many facts, but there aren't as many facts, but you may require quotes. You may require a better understanding. Philosophical essays themselves could be of two varieties. So I'm talking of one, philosophical essays, and second, factual. Philosophical essays can also come in two varieties. One is your personality one, and the other is abstract. We will discuss all these in subsequent slides. Why am I telling you this is, as you prepare and as you look at the previous year's question papers, you'll find that by and large, in the first group, you have philosophical essays, and in the second one, which are more factual in nature. The division is not so strict. There could be an overlap. In some of the essays, especially relating to personality, there could be a need for certain factual details. But by and large, they may not require factual details. In the factual essays, as we will see, you will have to have those facts in command. The idea of distributing them in these categories is that in the first category of essays, the philosophical essays, my suggestion is that you should try and understand and learn a number of quotes. You must try and understand a few philosophers. Whereas in the second case, you have to prepare certain data which could be used in a variety of essays. The idea of this presentation here is to help you prepare in categories, not for a particular essay, because as we go along and as we see the essays that have come in the previous years, you will discover that in the first category of essays, if you remember the right quotes, they could fit into almost all the essays in that particular subcategory. Similarly, if you have certain facts at command, you will see that those facts become useful in those categories of essays. When we discuss those categories, we'll come to more specifics. I'm generally telling you because that's how you should go and prepare. The third part is, which again I'll repeat later on as well, is that you should try and read the Indian and Western philosophers, especially for this variety of essay. Because you will understand a large number of concepts which could be useful for you when you write an essay which is philosophical in nature. So with this background, let me get down to the specific categories of essay. I think to my mind and the little analysis that I've done of the previous year's papers, this is the most important category. And there is a reason behind it. Because all of you, and hopefully most of you will become civil servants, very important is you. How do you develop yourself? And that is why these essays on self-development are extremely critical. It's just a coincidence that last year I wrote a book, You Can Make It Happen. It is about self-development. And in fact, it touches upon a number of topics that have been asked in the recent past. It was not a deliberate choice. It is just a coincidence as I was going through my book again, and as I was looking at the essays, topics that have come in the previous years, I found that a number of topics get covered there. So self-development is the most critical aspect of civil servants' existence, and hence you will find that every year there are essays on self-development. And so friends, if you can prepare certain topics here, those topics would be helpful to you in writing any essay on self-development, because the fundamental attributes of self-development remain the same. They have remained the same over the years, and they shall remain the same over the coming few years. So they may appear to be philosophical in a particular context, but you will be able to relate to them much more, because they are for human beings per se. They're not abstract in nature. Let's look at some of the topics that have come. Look at this. Courage to accept and dedication to improve are two key to success. Now, look at this essay. If you try and understand this essay, I can assure you that you will be able to understand other topics also. I've just picked up randomly the first essay, and it says courage to accept. Accept what? Accept the objective conditions, understand the objective conditions, and then your commitment to improve. By acceptance, you are admitting your own problems and limitations. Because it is usually believed that unless you accept the existence of a problem, how will you go about solving it? So this is a very important aspect of personality development, that you should have the courage, you should have the humility to accept your own shortcomings. Any development will happen once you accept the ground reality. Many of the problems that continue to exist in society are on account of a failure to even admit and accept the existence of such problems. And by calling it everything is hunky-dory, we don't even look at the details of the problem, because we don't recognize the existence of that problem. And that's what it says, that without understanding the ground reality, you cannot think in terms of improving upon them. The first step towards improvement is acceptance of that ground reality, which could be your own limitations, which could be existence of a problem. That is where everything begins. Now, why have I gone into these details of the first topic? Because if you understand this aspect, you will see that this approach to understanding a topic would help you then write essays on other topics also. Let's look at the second topic. Ships do not sink because of water around them. Ships sink because of the water that gets into them. Now, there is a relationship between this and the previous topic. Both were asked, and one in 2019, the other is 2020. What this is saying is a very remarkable thing. And I've believed it now, that whereas you should understand the objective conditions in which you exist, you can't do much to the set of circumstances. A lot that you can do is to yourself. So you have to look inward and see, what can I do to myself? It's all a question of self-improvement, so that my ship doesn't sink. I have no control over the storms that are there outside, but I have a lot of control in designing my ship in a manner that it does not sink in the set of circumstances which could be stormy. For that, you have to understand the nature of the storm. So understanding the objective conditions become a very necessary condition for you to evolve in a manner so that you can handle such storms. So whereas not being overly concerned about the external factors because you have no control over them. So this brings me to the next point, that there could be an essay where they would ask you that you have no control over set of circumstances around you. You have a lot of control over yourself. If you look at the philosophies of philosophers, whether Western or Indian, you will find that almost everyone agrees to this aspect, that you have absolutely no control over the set of circumstances around you, but you have enormous control over yourself, and you should then work your system in a manner that you are able to handle the objective conditions that exist, which you cannot change, but you can change yourself. So there is a relationship between the first and the second topic. Let's look at the third topic, which is a trifle different, but also related to personality development. Ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what is ship for. So every life has a purpose. So you can play safe. And this is related to bureaucracy a lot, because most of the bureaucratic ships would like to stay in the harbor. They don't take risk. And that is one of the biggest criticisms by bureaucracy, that we do not, as bureaucrats, we are risk averse. So this relates to that. I have listed these topics together because these are attributes of a civil servant, which even the examiner is trying to gauge whether you have such attributes in you, which gets expressed in the form of an essay. What is the next topic? Next topic is not all who wander are lost. Now look at this topic and look at the 2022 topic, a ship in harbor. Very similar in nature. It's not necessary that when you go out and explore, you will get lost. There are risks involved. But until you take risk, as is in the topic of 2022, how do you move ahead? It's very important. Look at the next one. Visionary decision making happens at the intersection of intuition and logic. So what we are doing here is, we are looking at intuition. And where does the intuition comes from? Intuition comes from your experience. All your intuitive capabilities develop over a period of time from your experience. And that comes to bear when you take a decision. And of course, logic is extremely critical for taking decisions. And finally, the cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing. Look at this topic in 2024 and look at the topic of 2022. Ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what the ship is all about. Almost similar topics. So if you try and understand and develop this sort of an essay, the chances are that you will get one essay. So this is about risk, courage, purpose, and exploration. There are other aspects also of this. This is from the Stoic philosophy. If you read the Epicureans, you will understand this. This again is a very important aspect of personality development. Mindful manifesto is the catalyst to a tranquil self. So, look at the other one. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So what is bureaucrat expected to be? He's not expected to be flashy. He has to be simple. And that's what gets outlined in these topics. The examiner is trying to see whether you not merely understand this, your convictions about it. Essay enables the examiner to examine inside of you, because in an essay of so many words that you write, they're able to get your attitude, your mental frame, that gets reflected in your essay. Philosophy of wantlessness is utopian. I have often said, I've not read it anywhere, but I used to say that happiness is inversely proportional to expectation. There could be a topic like this. If you stop expecting of others, then you can lead a very happy life. One of the biggest causes of misery is expectation of others. Just reflect over it. My suggestion to all of you is that these topics are given here as you do your physical exercises, and I hope you are indulging in it, either walking or doing some in a gym. Your mind can start reflecting on some of these topics and develop them. It won't happen immediately. It takes time. As I keep saying, this sort of an analytical mind comes over a period of time. But if you indulge in reflection, if you indulge in this thought process, gradually you start understanding these topics and your thought process will also become analytical. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Now, it may be factually, physiologically correct as well, but I think philosophically and in our own life, sometimes it is good to leave the muddy waters. Because if you jump into that, if you try and stir it, it only spoils the water further. Let the silt settle down. And it also means that you have to bide your time and find the right occasion for indulgence. You don't have to jump to things straight away. Again, these are very similar. Look at this. Contentment is natural wealth. Luxury is artificial poverty. Now look at this and read it with what came in the second topic, which is in 2020, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Aren't these topics similar? You will find this similarity, and if you can find the details of this, here again, now a lot of material is available on internet. If you take that material out and read it, then you will see a pattern. You will see a logic. You will see a thread. If you are able to get that, then you will be able to write an essay on any such topic that comes to you. Now, this is the third part of self-development. And again, a very important part, because leadership is a skill that is expected of all civil servants. There again, when you write this essay, you will be able to convey your own understanding of what good leadership is all about. Let's look at some of the topics that have been asked. With greater power comes greater responsibility, a well-known quote. My suggestion to all of you is that look at the previous year's papers and you will discover all these are quotes of somebody somewhere. How about understanding and learning some of them? And you can actually start your essay with a similar quote that for which the essay is asked. But there your understanding of both the quotes has to be very clear. I've often said the embellishments through quotes have to go along with the topic that you have. You just can't write a quote just because you know a quote. You have to understand the topic. If it gels with the quote that you have in mind, then use it. A good way of starting an essay is a similar quote as the topic of the essay, because that will help the examiner understand that you have understood the topic very clearly because you have come up with a quote which is similar in nature. And these quotes can come from previous year's question papers, or as you read the philosophers. All such videos are already available on StudyIQ. I have done videos on Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. I have done it on Epicureans, on Stoics. I have done it on Indian philosophers like Rabindranath Tagore. These videos are already there. My suggestion is take a look at these videos in your free time and read these philosophers in the books of ethics that has been created by StudyIQ. I have gone through that book. It's a very well outlined book. Once you understand these philosophers and you read these essay headlines, you will immediately be able to relate to what is being asked in this essay with the philosopher that you've read. But this has to be a process that has to be cultivated over a period of time. It can't be a one-time process. Essay writing cannot be treated as any subject like politics or economics. No, it is not that. It evolves over a period of time, and hence this practice has to be consistent every day. And that is why what I mentioned in the beginning, for developing communication skills, for developing analytical skills, read analytical articles. StudyIQ sends you articles very regularly. And I have also suggested that you should be reading editorial page. All this is to develop that faculty of analysis, that faculty of being able to present your argument logically, cogently, coherently, because all these articles have these attributes. Okay, coming back to the items that have come, look at this. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but to test the character, give him power. No, this is not merely here. If I remember correctly, it was Abraham Lincoln who said, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So you can pick up a quote from somewhere and start your essay that way. This is all related to, and you can give examples of how absolute power corrupted the persons who wielded that power in the history of the world. There's so many examples where absolute power destroyed nations. So you can quote or you can give examples. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, these are not abstract topics, and hence there are clear examples that could become available to illustrate the point that you're trying to make. So you'll use two aspects. One is quotes of philosophers or leaders and historical examples to establish the point that you're trying to make. Character of an institution is reflected in its leader. Again, leadership. Because unlike elsewhere in the world, even elsewhere in the world, I think leaders define the character of a particular institution. They may not be able to change it totally, but on more occasions than not, the whole institutions get defined by the leader he or she has. You yourself discover when you become civil servants, that a district magistrate in a particular district brings about a different change to the place, and you have another leader sitting there who brings a bad name to the place. This is true of most of the institutions. This is not to belittle the role of systems and institutions, but individuals have a very important role, especially those occupying important positions of leadership, which bring a good or bad name to a particular institution. This is very important in the context of bureaucracy, because bureaucrats head institutions, especially civil servants like you. Budding civil servants like you, when you do become civil servants, you will determine the future of a particular organization substantially when you're there. So whether that institution does well or doesn't do well, quite a lot depends on what you are. How do you manage men and women? How do you manage resources there? It is what that matters. Okay, then the fourth dimension of personality development. I have taken so many topics from personality development for the simple reason that if you work on this aspect, I'm convinced that you will get at least one essay. You will get two. You can get two. But at least one is certain. You develop the habit or the understanding of such essays, of such essay writings. It's guaranteed that you will get at least one essay. You can get two as well. Now let's look at this aspect. Knowledge and personal growth. Thinking is like a game. It does not begin unless there is an opposite team. Now here, this is a very democratic principle that you grow. I mean, if you look at the philosophers, whether it was Socrates and later on whether Hegel or Marx, everyone talked about a discussion, a dialogue. A dialogue happens between two. Socrates was the first person who promoted this aspect of dialogue. Of course, it was further nurtured later on that if you don't have a different point of view, then you don't evolve. If everyone agrees with you, you're not evolving. That's a fundamental democratic principle. So if you do that, then visionary decision making happens in the intersection of intuition and logic. This is something which had happened, which was listed earlier also. It's come here because it is your intuition will be determined by your experience, as I said earlier, and your experience and the knowledge that you gain will help you develop better intuitive skills. Then inspiration for creativity springs from the effort to look for the magical in the mundane. This is a very, very interesting topic. World around you is not magical. But people who succeed, leaders who succeed, are able to create magic out of nothing. So that's where innovative skills, your intuitive skills, your visionary, if you're visionary, you will be able to look through the mundane and get the best. Now, these topics, if you look again at examples, and you can actually select about 50 or 60 examples, which can then be selectively picked up for a particular topic. So what I'm looking at is, for personality development, you look at 50, 60 examples, you look at about 40, 50 quotes, you prepare them, and then practice writing different essays, picking up selectively from these quotes and these examples. Because if you look at those 40, 50 examples, they will cover almost every essay giving year. Those just 40, 50 examples, you have to just research, find those examples, and if you use those examples and 30, 40 quotes, you should be able to write any of these essays. Just because you have a choice, it does not mean that any of them has to be right. Choice does not necessarily mean that every choice is right. Now, again, you reflect on it. The reason why I'm mentioning all this to you is that you cannot learn all this by heart. Your mind has to move in such a manner that you are able to analyze all these topics. And again, I could keep going back to the necessity of developing analytical skills for writing such essays. Best lessons are learned through bitter experiences. Again, this could come in any form. I would believe this would be asked this year, next year, or thereafter in different form. Exact same topic will not come, but topic could be you learn from your failures. You learn from your mistakes. Failures are the best teachers. Similar to this, failures are the best teachers. So you learn from your failures. And you can start by saying that there's nobody on earth who hasn't failed once or twice. The successful are those who have gone on to learn from their failures. Failures teach you much more than anything else. Now, Look at these quotes around this and you will find an essay appearing somewhere or the other. The years teach much which the days never know. So something you can learn over a period of time, may not be in a particular day. I'm not elaborating on these aspects. Maybe in subsequent sessions, we'll pick up a few essay topics and then discuss at length on how to develop those essays. The idea today is basically to give you a flavor of the categories of essays that are asked. And my personal view is that if you prepare for a category, the chances are that you'll get an essay from that particular category. It's much easier preparing that way than preparing each essays individually. And finally, in personality development towards excellence. All of us aspire to improve, and that's what excellence is all about. There are better practices to best practices. I don't exactly remember the phraseology, but says the best is the enemy of good, something like that. It's similar. You can pick up quotes. I'm an old man, I've forgotten most of them, but as youngsters, you should be able to remember and recall number of quotes through which you can start your particular essay. You cannot step twice in the same river. History never repeats itself. Many ways the same thing can be said, and if you understood it, you should be able to write an essay. A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ship is for. We've seen that before. Just because you have a choice, this also we've seen before. The time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. A stitch in time saves 9. There are similar quotes that are available. All you have to do is to recall those, and that will reflect your understanding of the essay. If you actually present a quote in the beginning, which is similar to the quote that is given for the subject, you will convey an impression that you understood the topic. Then you develop the topic. So half the battle would be won if you start with the right quote. It is best to see life as a journey, not as a destination. My friends, this is karma. This is enjoying your karma. This is enjoying your present. We have no control over the future. We don't know what has happened. We can't change our past, it's happened. The only control that you have is on the present. And if you can focus on the present, it will be the building blocks for the future. Again, I'm not developing this essay right now, but what I'm trying to tell you is, you start thinking of those lines, and then you will be in a better position to construct an essay. Then we come to values, ethics, humanity, and idealism. This is something, if you've done your ethics paper well, a topic on ethics, you should be able to write. Be the change you want to see the others. The famous Mahatma Gandhi quote. The journey begins from you. And a similar quote has been asked earlier, that you can't change the set of circumstances, but even if you want to change them, you have to start at yourself. Similar to that. Again, if you prepare that essay, this you can write very well. A good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge. So it's a question of heart and mind. And there's so many quotes available for heart and mind going together. That's what it says. The people that values its privileges above its principles loses both. Again, absolutely pure and simple from ethics. So if you've done your ethics well, you should be able to write the answer very well. Customary morality cannot be a guide to modern life. How is it different? What is morality? Again, if you've done your ethics paper well, if you studied them well. Here again, if you look at the philosophies of philosophers, both Western and Indian, it will help you write these essays. Values are not what humanity is, but what humanity ought to be. So it's normative in nature. Usually you have some values. There are other values you would want to have, which the society should have. That's the normative part of it. Again, this comes from your understanding of values, ethics, morality. And once you understand that, you should be able to write an essay here. Life is a long journey between human being and being human. What you ought to be and what you are. See, that's what it is. One says what you ought to be. That's the principles of the society. That's the ideal that you have and what you are. And the whole life is a journey from what you are to what you can. That's what this is. There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. We talked about the journey, somewhere. You enjoy the journey that you take. That's what it means. So journey is something which you have control over, but you don't have control over results. Again, this is a karma theory. So if you understand the karma theory, if you know how to go about explaining karma, if you know how to go about enjoying the present moments, I think you would have prepared yourself at least for one of the essays. Truth knows no color, which means truth is truth is truth. Shashwat Satya. Whether it is there, is truth bereft of the circumstances in which it exists? You know, as I spoke about in the preparation for essay writing, what I would suggest to you is, whenever you get a topic, write down questions and then list them logically and try and answer them. That's the best way of writing an essay. Okay, now we come to philosophical essays. Now these essays are abstract in nature. My suggestion to all of you is that if you do not have good command over the English language or the language in which you have adopted as a medium, then don't pick up these topics. Until it's become imperative and you don't have any other choice, then you take it. But this is something which is difficult because it is at times difficult to relate to the abstract principles or abstract topics that are given here. Whereas in the previous ones, the previous group on personality development, they are indeed philosophical in nature, but you are able to relate to it. You have examples to prove or disprove what has been stated there. So it's much easier for you to go about writing on those topics. But philosophical, a bit tough. Let's look at it. Reality does not conform to the ideal, but confirms it. Now, again, it's a very abstract topic. You can give examples here, but it becomes a bit more difficult. Similarly, wisdom finds truth. Again, fairly abstract topic. But as I said, as you go on preparing, if you can prepare a few examples to illustrate what is stated here, it becomes easy for you. It also becomes easier for the examiner to understand what you are writing, because an example illustrates a point that you are trying to make. The real is rational and rational is real. These are all statements given by great philosophers, and if you do not know the background of those philosophies, sometimes it will be difficult for you to write such essays. Mathematics is the music of reason. So what is so common between mathematics and reason? What is so essential in reasons which is so mathematical? Again, pretty abstract, but here again you can give some examples, but you'll have to prepare accordingly. Thinking is like a game. It does not begin unless there is an appropriate team. This could actually be a part of leadership also, rather than pure philosophy. All ideas having large consequences are always simple. Now, we had a similar sort of a topic earlier, where we talked in terms of simplicity. This could be clubbed there as well. Thought finds a word and creates one also. You know, I think it was Voltaire who said that ideas determine everything in future. Ideas cannot be killed, men can be killed, but the ideas cannot be. So you have to understand the context, you have to understand the background of that philosopher who has come up with this, and it becomes different. This is not as difficult, change in permanence and time. The past is permanent dimension in human consciousness and values. How does the past, how does history, how has the past experience determine your value system? Your personal experience or experience of the society, they determine your value system. You cannot step twice in the same river. We discussed this earlier in the personality development also. Then creativity, expression, art. Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. They appeal to your senses, they appeal to your emotions, and they ultimately determine your thoughts. But then there could be a question mark whether they do that. Here again, you have to have very good command over the language and understanding of the subject for you to write an essay on that. A smile is the chosen vehicle for all ambiguities. So beginning from Mona Lisa's smile, which is still being deciphered as to what exactly did it stand for. People have different views, so smile can hide so many things. This is the metaphor. You can go into the details of it on how it applies practically to human life. Again, the topic is abstract. I keep repeating this until you have a good understanding of that subject, good control over your language, expression. Don't attempt these topics. Inspiration for Creativity springs from the effort to look for the magical in the mundane. We discussed this earlier in a different topic. The energies of the future will be the energies of the mind. So it's all a mind game. That's where we talked about ideas, how ideas can transform the world. That's where it comes from. This is similar to that. There have been essays that have been asked on women, and I would suggest there's no harm in preparing on a variety of subjects relating to women. These topics could be factual in nature. So you have to have some data. As I keep saying, for philosophical topics or semi-philosophical topics, you would require quotes to prove your point. You will require examples to prove your point, to establish a point. In case of women and otherwise factual, fact-based essays, you have to have certain facts at your command. Girls are weighed down by restrictions, boys with demands, two equally harmful disciplines. Now here, I don't think you necessarily have to have data. This is more in the domain of philosophy, and of course, practice. You can give examples to illustrate this point. Fulfillment of new women in India is a myth. Here, you can actually give some examples of how new women are evolving, emerging. If there is some data available to you, you can do that. Patriarchy is the least noticed, yet the most significant structure of social inequality. Here again, you could have data to embellish the points that you're trying to make. If development is not engendered, it is endangered. Again, you can illustrate this point, you can actually establish this point, how women can contribute, should contribute, do contribute to the development in society, and by ignoring women, how disastrous could it be? And you can give examples, you can give statistics. Countries that have taken into account this aspect have socially, economically developed much more than the countries that haven't. If you have the data, you can use that. Now, social justice and poverty, again, these are fact-based essays. Here, if you can, collect data relating to various social parameters, that will help you prove your point. Again, like the quotes, data has to be used to establish a point. You should not try and establish a point because you have a data. You have to have the data, but you have to use it as an embellishment. It should not stand out just because to show off that you have some data. So a society that has more justice is a society that needs less charity. Maybe you can get some data that societies that are more just have developed economically and socially. There can be no social justice without economic prosperity. Can you furnish data, get the data, how economic prosperity has led to, or by and large led to, greater social justice? Here again, data would be very useful to you. We may brave human laws but cannot resist natural laws. You can list out the natural laws which may not be codified as human laws because they may not. Here again, ethics comes into being. What is ethics? Ethics are basically not laws per se, but they are values that are accepted by the society, and they may not be in the form of codified laws, but holding the society together. So how you can actually go into the details of the importance of human laws and as much importance of values that are not part of laws, but they're natural laws. So especially in the context of environment, there may not be laws available, but intuitively we all understand and appreciate the fact why environment has to be protected. And that's a natural law. If you don't do that, you will come to harm. Neglect of primary health care and education in India are reasons for its backwardness. Here, you have to give statistics of the primary health care in India, of education in India, the problems there, and how it has impacted our economic growth. This again, these are all factual essays. My hunch is that every year there would be one set of philosophical essays, the other set would be factual. I have seen in a couple of years, all were philosophical in nature, it could be that. But by and large, you would have a set of philosophical essays, and the second would be a set of essays based on facts, for which you may have to collect facts, you may have to remember them, and then use them. So as I said sometime before, you have to collect those quotes, You have to collect those facts and then see where those facts could be used as you write your essays. So impact of new economic measures on fiscal ties between union and states of India. Here, you have to have facts at command. My suggestion to you would be, if it's a subject-based essay like this one, a person who has economics as a subject probably will be in a better position to write this essay. So if you have another option, pick that essay. Because as compared to the person who studied economics, where he would have a probably greater set of data at his command to write that essay, you may not have that much. Don't attempt this essay. But if you don't have any other option, you can go ahead. Because the fundamental data of poverty, of social development, of economic development, all that data will be available to you, and you can use that data to write this essay. Water disputes between states in federal, very, very factual. What are the disputes? Why are the disputes? What effort have been made to sort it out so far? How can it be done in the future? You write down these questions, and answer to these questions will be this essay. Cooperative federalism, myth or reality. Here again, you can give the legal framework, you can give the political framework, you can give how it has actually happened, you can write what has actually problems, what could be the roadmap for the future. You can structure these essays. You know, the good thing about these essays is structuring becomes that much more simple and easy as compared to the philosophical essays, where structuring becomes difficult if you have not understood the concept very clearly. Then inclusive economy and economic justice. Here again, as I say, if you have the data at command, write this. Because without data, you will not be able to establish the point that you are making. Let's look at some of these the essays that have come. Digital economy, a leveler or a source of economic inequality. If you have some data, use it. But this essay you can write actually without data also, though of course people who use data will score over you. Why? Because you have to empirically try and also prove the point that you are trying to make. If there are some studies that have happened, if you can quote them, it would be much better. Otherwise, it will be like any other abstract topic. Innovation is the key determinant to economic growth and social welfare. You have to look at historically how innovation had actually transformed economies. Look at Industrial Revolution in Europe. Europe was as poor or probably worse than some parts of the world. Industrial Revolution transformed it. What was that? It was innovation. More innovations are coming now, like AI. AI is going to transform the world. Now, countries that are going to pick up and use AI in the manner that it ought to will move much faster than other countries. So innovation is the key to development, and it leads to exponential growth, as was the case with Industrial Revolution in Europe. Near jobless growth in India, an anomaly or an outcome of economic reform. Here again, you have to have data. Without that data, you will not be able to prove a point. You know, generally speaking, you would be competing with people who have that background, in economics, will have more of that data. So you can actually prepare a set of data for yourself, which could be useful for you in general studies also. So that's where these type of topics can emanate out of your knowledge in the general studies papers. So if you prepare them well, you know, the beauty about UPSC is a large number of papers are interdependent, so to say. There is a lot of overlap in that. So if you prepared the Indian economy well, it will help you write an essay here. Farming has lost the ability to be source of subsistence for majority of farmers in India. Now, whether it is or not, you should have data to establish that. Poverty anywhere is threat to prosperity everywhere. Another famous quote, how it impacts the general development of a country. Forests are the best case studies for economic excellence. Then education and morality. Here again, a lot of data that you require. Education without values again comes from your understanding of ethics and values, how values are so important, and the lack of values, what is doing to the society. You can give a number of examples how it is impacting social development in the country. Destiny of a nation is shaped in its classroom. How education is so very important for the future of a particular country. Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. Here, the difference between education and learning, what you do in schools, what values you carry thereafter. Then, of course, global order, people who are studying political science, in any case, you have to study international relations and general studies. If you do that well, you should be able to answer the questions here. Technology as the silent factor in international relations. I mean, it's becoming increasingly more and more important. Countries that are technologically more sound are in a better position to lead the world. And one reason why America leads, or at least led till some point in time, was because of the technological development that had happened in those countries. When I say technology, it is not only modern day technology. As was mentioned earlier, Europe took the lead because there was a technological or industrial revolution in that country. Management of Indian border disputes, a complex task. Again, from security aspect in your general studies paper, you can actually write an essay here. South Asian societies are women, not around the state, but around the plural cultures and plural identities. This has more to do with gender than a global order, and has the non-aligned movement lost its relevance? You could have an essay on United Nations this year. Has United Nations lost its relevance? So all this fact-based essays will depend on your understanding of general studies. Then, of course, technology is something which I would believe there would be an essay almost every year. So you prepare this well. So 2 parts, I'm certain you'll get an essay. One is personality development, the first part, and the third, technology in some form or the other. If you prepare yourself on this aspect, the chances are that you'll get an essay. Here, almost every year there is an essay that is being asked in different forms. But if you prepare fundamentally for technology, then you should be able to get an essay. So friends, this is what I had to say. Broadly speaking, you have to prepare for your philosophical essays, which could be personality development or abstract, as I said in the beginning, and fact space. My suggestion to you is that you should have learnt and understood a large number of quotes, 40, 50 quotes, put them in categories so that you are able to use those quotes effectively when you write an essay, and prepare certain statistics and facts with you which can be used in your factual essay. But having said what I've said, I think there is no better alternative than practice, practice, and practice. I have often said to most of the aspirants over the past few years that I've been guiding that there is no alternative to practicing. So my suggestion to you has always been write at least one essay every week. Thank you. God bless you. Take care.
StudyIQ IAS, आपका सिलेक्शन हमारा मिशन।